Practically every one of the top 40 records being played on every radio station in the United States is a communication to the children to take a trip, to cop out, to groove. The psychedelic jackets on the record albums have their own hidden symbols and messages, as well as all the lyrics of all the pop rock songs. And they all sing the same refrain. It's fun.
This is a special request. We don't want you to smoke genetically modified ganja. We want you to smoke the real thing. We want you to smoke the natural herb. Some call it marijuana, some call it sensimedia, some call it lamb's bread, and some people call it ganja.
Welcome to the Adam Dunn Show. I'm your stand-in host, Mitch Crunchy. Adam Dunn is out today. And with me, I have Trusty Crunchy. I was thinking of Crunchy if you were like, if we lived in medieval times. You would probably be Max the Ginger, obviously. Max the Ginger on the end there.
Thanks, Mitch.
Did you get to introduce yourself, Max?
Oh, I thought you were introducing me.
Well,
Hi.
that was your lineup.
That was my cue.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Max Montrose.
And Max is a cannabis educator, and
I'm a cannabis educator, and I'm a cannabis student always. I'm here to learn and teach people what I know.
right on. And back to Crunchy. Crunchy, I feel like you would be Crunchy the Resolute would be your name. That
The Resolute?
Yeah, Resolute is the prime adjective that comes to mind when I think of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Do you feel like do I know you well, or I'm like, wow, that's not me at all. I'm hardly resolute.
I mean, I'm resolute. I hardly think that I would be known as that, mostly because of my bloodlust.
Oh, Crunchy the bloodlusty.
I don't know about that. You know, the unquenchable.
There you go. And Jason, how do you introduce yourself? Jason of Delta 9.
Formerly of
Delta 9 of Darkhorse Genetics
yeah,
now?
Darkhorse would be the new thing, yeah.
Yeah, right on. For folks who don't know, Jason's the man behind the Bruce Banner strains and ran one of the top spots out here in Denver for a while, and is, I guess, doing his own seed line now, which we're going to find out more about.
Yes, sir.
So if you guys haven't caught on, Adam's not here. He and Ryan are at the NCIA convention in Las Vegas. I am here in snowy Colorado. Murphy Murray is also out today. She will be hopefully in the chat room, and I'm going to get the timer started because I'm way off here. But I do want to do a little PSA because everyone here thankfully made it safely to the studio, but while Adam and Ryan are chilling in probably 80-some-odd degree Las Vegas, it's really snowy here. And also, that's a good cue, I think, for me to give shouts to our friends in Alaska who are a little offended with what I had to say about Alaska last episode. And I have to personally apologize because it seems like Alaska is a much cooler place than we gave it credit for from what the research I've done since. And hopefully we'll be appreciating the wonders of Alaska sometime this year. We'll take the show on the road up there. Cool. So, all right, listen, let me just tell everybody in Colorado, the driving, the snow thing. Okay, what you need to do when you're driving in the snow is you need to respect the snow. So what that specifically means is there are three types of people who screw up in driving in the snow. The first type ignores the snow. You don't ignore the snow. You can't just be like, there's no snow. Just drive how you would normally drive. Don't ignore the snow. The second are the people who drive in spite of the snow because they have too much faith in their vehicle. Like, oh, this thing is all-wheel drive. Fuck it, all these people are driving too slow.
That was me this morning, by the way.
Yeah, that's all. I know it's someone. It's like, oh, guess what? You don't get to do that. Like you can drive normally, but you don't get to drive extra crazy because you have an awesome car.
I disagree with that. I think snow is awesome because you can drive like you can block, but at like 18 miles an hour.
Well, that's the cool thing about snow too is that
I did a 360 this morning, actually 2. After I did my first one on accident, I did the second one.
On
Just
purpose,
tried to
yeah.
land.
Yeah, I was like, oh, this is cool.
Yeah, that felt good. I'm going to do that again.
And the third type of terrible snow driver are the people who fear the snow. And these are the people who are like, you could tell that what happened is they got out there, it was more than they bargained for, and they're just going to go 15 miles per hour all the way where they got to go. And like, want to know what, guys? Just leave the wipers up before you get in the car. Like when you get out of the car, warm that shit up. The people don't brush their windows off. Like the basics of snow. It's 2 inches of snow. It's not a big deal. But Yeah, the 45-minute drive here turned into 2 hours, so I felt like ranting.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of transplants that came to the state as well, so a lot of people might not be familiar with driving in the snow, freaking out a little bit with it or whatever. I'm from here or whatever, but I used to work up at Copper Mountain driving a little 2-wheel drive pickup truck, you know what I mean? So there was many times you couldn't make it up to pass or whatever, and you kind of had to like learn from experience how to drive. But yeah, I think it kind of goes hand in hand with a little bit of experience here. But to tell you the truth, snow's no problem. Water is what scares me. Like I don't want to drive hydroplane in water or everything else.
No, the roads have terrible drainage here.
Yeah, for real. But no, yeah, it's a Colorado thing. You just kind of got to pick it up and learn how to do it. But it's cold and freezing today. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was 2 degrees driving down here. When my 6-month-old kid can almost count to what the temperature is, I'm worried.
Yeah, right.
I'm worried. It's how hot is it outside? 2. It's 2 outside. That's terrible.
The question is what's the temperature in Vegas today?
Much nicer than 2.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Magnitudes greater.
Closer to 80. All right.
But, the thing I was thinking about while I was driving in the snow, in the ice, and realizing the types of bad snow drivers there are, it's almost like the same. Like driving in the snow is a lot like dealing with a pest in your garden. This is the metaphor that I found to link it back to the show. Because you just got to respect it and do what you got to do. You can't fear it. You can't get cocky about it. And you damn sure can't act like it's not there. If you act like it's not there, you're screwed. If you just freeze up and you don't know what to do and freak out.
Right, a little preventative maintenance maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta
heat
get your
the
tires
car up,
changed,
brush the
yeah.
windows off,
Right.
Snow tires
Snow
on.
tires on, yeah, get ready for it.
And another thing that really helps out if you're if you're a recent transplant. I'm from Miami. If you're a recent transplant, go to an empty parking lot that's snowy
And practice.
and just rip it open. Just see what happens. Learn how to control your spin. Know what's gonna happen when you do this or do that. That way, you're a lot more confident on the road.
And that's not necessarily going to translate to the garden, but it might. I don't know.
It would. I mean,
It would.
You-
All right. You
It's
wanna
being
segue
proactive.
You want to segue to some news?
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. Let's news it up. All right. This is one that I saw all over my Facebook today. I actually printed out like the real scientific journal article, but did not have time to dig into it. But the brains of marijuana users are different, especially if they start young. If you're confused about what marijuana use really does to people, wow, apparently it makes them screw up reading. If you're concerned about what marijuana use really does to people who use it, you're not alone. For years, the scientific research on health effects of the drug have been all over the map. Earlier this year, one study suggested that even casual marijuana use could cause changes to the brain. Another found that marijuana use was also associated with poor sperm quality, which could lead to infertility in men. Which, dude, Adam was like 42 when he had his kid. I don't even buy that. He would say that if he were sitting there, so I got to say it for him. Crunch, how's your sperm quality?
I don't care.
Mine was, I made a baby. It's proper. But marijuana advocates point to other research indicating that the drug is far less addictive than other drugs, and some studies have found no relationship between IQ and marijuana use in teens. Researchers at the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas in Dallas sought to clear up some of the confusion with a study that looked at a relatively large group of marijuana users and evaluated their brains for a slew of different indicators. What they found was complex, but the pattern was clear. The brains of marijuana users were different than those of non-marijuana users, which I felt like we all knew intuitively. Like you're either of our kind or not of our kind inherently. The area of the brain responsible for establishing the reward system that helps us survive and also keeps us motivated was smaller in users than in non-marijuana users. I feel like that's also the area of the brain that makes you like douchey too. It may have an overlap with douchiness when that gets too big, when that particular part of your brain, when you're like your reward system's a little over needy. But that's my editorial. But there was also evidence that the brain compensated for this loss of volume by increasing connectivity and the structural integrity of the brain tissue. So it makes the douchey part of your brain less strong. It makes the rest of your brain better, is my read on it. Again, that's probably not what the conclusion in the paper says.
I wouldn't say that's an accurate scientific representation of the data.
I think it is an accurate
There you go.
thing
There
to
you
say, though, that without a doubt, cannabis is a neurological protectant.
I would
which
say
is
that.
which is why Sativex from GW Pharmaceuticals, UK, Australia, Canada, is out since 2006. 1-to-1 ratio, CBD, THC spray. I mean, apparently, what a lot of people are saying is it puts your MS, it stops your MS in its tracks. And my personal MS patient that I used to take care of used to be violently, like, shaking so bad that he actually couldn't smoke a bowl because he was just shaking so hard. I'd give him a dab of some real high-quality sativa, not an indica. And, I mean, to watch someone's entire shakes just shake off until they, like, become normal in less than a 5-minute period, and someone who's telling you I can feel the lesions in my brain swelling, and then I smoke and it just goes away and I feel fine. You just can't argue with what you can see in front of your face, but the science is all over. It's a neurological
I just
protectant.
meant the douchiness.
He's like,
I know a lot of douchey people that smoke.
yeah.
So
No, but to your point though, there, real quick, there's a lot of similarities with what you just said exactly with MS, autism, epilepsy. I mean, it all across the board, which is, I mean, huge fact.
I've seen amazing stuff. I mean, I'm
sure.
not denying the science behind the medicinal aspects, and especially the neuropathic and just neurological aspects. I'm just saying douchiness is a very wide spectrum thing, and I don't think it's a cure-all. Douchiness is a hard thing to really stamp down.
fair
Gonna
point,
need some help
Crunchy.
with that one, yeah.
So, just reading some from the actual scientific paper here. Altogether, if these effects are induced, no, that's discussion. No, it's nothing that you can really pull a quick quote out of. But essentially, yeah, there's some speculation that since endogenous cannabinoids play an important role in synaptic pruning, therefore introduction of exogenous cannabinoids such as THC might disrupt the system by competing for the receptors and thereby inhibiting synaptic pruning, particularly in receptor-enriched areas such as the OFC, which something frontal cortex probably. I don't know. Not really a neuro guy. Crunchy, read news.
Okay. This one is super interesting to me. UN says U.S. marijuana legalization violates international law.
It does.
Yeah,
Because
international law that we set.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was gonna say, how does that
You
work?
guys
when,
start making that shit illegal, and we'll start paying your bills.
Right.
So it was Nixon in 1972 that said, hey, not only is weed going to be the most dangerous, most illegal substance on earth for us Americans, it's actually going to be that for the rest of every other country on planet Earth. How does that happen? How is that possible? How can a president stand up and say, by the way, I'm going to decide what every single one of your countries is going to live by?
Hubris.
Yeah, hubris. And
Nuclear-induced hubris. Which is actually the name of my memoirs.
All right, Crunch Dog. You read it?
Moves by some U.S. states to legalize marijuana are not in line with international drugs conventions. The UN anti-narcotics chief said on Wednesday, adding he would discuss the issue in Washington next week. Residents of Oregon, Alaska, and the U.S. Capitol voted this month to allow the use of marijuana, boosting the legalization movement as a cannabis usage is increasingly recognized by American mainstream. I don't see how the new laws can be compatible with existing conventions, Yuri Fedotov, executive director of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, told reporters. Asked whether there was anything that the UNODC could do about it, Fedotov said he would raise the problem next week with the U.S. State Department and the UN agencies. I don't know. It just seems weird. Like, what could they do about it?
I feel like that's telling, like, if you tell your kid, like, listen, can't smoke in the house, and then your kid catches you smoking in the house and gives you shit over it, I feel like you get to be like, my house, my rules. Like, America gets to say my house, my rules. No? I know that's ignorant, and I know we have international callers.
It depends.
Listeners.
It depends on, like, the thing is, my house, my rules works when you're not trying to impose rules in everybody else's house at the same time.
Yep.
True that.
There you go.
So, let me go to this one. This one was really interesting to me, actually.
Well, you remember the UN was pissed when Colorado legalized in 2012.
Yeah, because
And then-
everyone's making some money this way, and they need to keep it up.
Let me ask you this, though. What happens with the Schedule 1? If we can take it off Schedule 1, if our boy Jared Polis makes some action happen, we get it off Schedule 1, does that internationally change things? In anyone's point of view?
Well,
I think it begins the like, everyone needs the cop out, right? Like, no one wants to jump out in front of that and try to turn the tide of this big boulder of prohibition that's rolling. So if, like,
It's
Superman,
a money machine, right?
yeah, and if America comes out and does it, someone else will be like, yeah, I'll follow that play.
Right.
If anyone comes out and does it, I think that we just as independent states have started taking those steps first, and there are other countries where it is relatively legal. I think it's just prominent and seeing the industry about it, like, it's decriminalized it. in a lot of places, essentially. Right. But when people see us, like, you know, all the TV shows and all the other crap that's coming on.
Well, that just kind of leads me into the whole DC thing with their legalization. I mean, they're not a state. They're like, you know, how's that going to work? If Washington D.C. is now legal, but the feds got this Schedule 1 and it's not legal, you know what I mean? Like
that's what's cool about it is that Congress has to talk about it now. It's forces that
the
discussion.
Issue, right?
Yeah.
And can you imagine them saying, "Oh yeah, our people voted for that, but we're just gonna like put democracy on the side real quick and not." Respect
and that's
that.
a big issue of tension with D.C. and the federal government, from what I understand. Like people who live in D.C., which is not like most people who work in the government live in Virginia, not D.C. D.C. is mostly inner city, and kind of the federal government shits all over it. All right, we got one more news story I want to get in here, but rather than Washington D.C. Politics, how will legalization affect the language around marijuana? This is cool. It's from the Oxford Dictionaries Online. With Alaska, Oregon, and District of Columbia passing measures on November 4th to legalize recreational marijuana, joining Colorado and Washington as U.S. regions where the sale of the drug is or will be illegal, I thought it might be worth taking a look at the language surrounding the contested cannabis. You know, the last two letters of every line are cut off, and I can't guess what that is. Not unlike other much discussed substances, see this previous entry on English's many terms for being drunk. Marijuana culture has gathered around a rich linguistic history, including a rash of slang synonyms. These are an awesome list. This is their list, right? Pot, hash, weed, dope, grass, bud, reefer, and ganja, not to mention its own specific lingo. So obviously Oxford is super on point with the latest and greatest. With almost half of the U.S. states having passed either decriminalization measures or medical marijuana laws, several states having passed both, and 4 states and the District of Columbia now having legalized recreational use of the drug. It remains to be seen how the line is cut off here. One effect of the full legalization of marijuana in Washington and Colorado has been the rise of new words to talk about the drug's commercialization. Thus, we have the term ganjapreneur, which plays the slang term for marijuana, plays the slang term for marijuana, ganja, and preneur from entrepreneur, describing a business person in the marijuana industry. The lopping off of preneur from entrepreneur has been on the rise since for the past several decades, and was even enshrined by Alan Sorkin in the 2010 film The Social Network. What's your latest preneur?
What's your preneur?
I just don't get why this article has to explain portmanteau. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, because people don't know, bud. All right, 420 is another one they bring up. Despite being fairly widespread in North America, April 20th, 420 in U.S. date notation, has become, I don't know what that word is, counterculture holiday. Oh, a counterculture holiday. With annual events in cities from San Francisco to Montreal, few are sure where the term even originates. Good, Crunch. You're good at guessing this. You should be a cryptographer. So, all right, maybe this isn't the best one, but joint, this is one I bring up a lot, and that's what caught my eye because I was trying to do the research for my book. Max, maybe you can help me on this, on the etymology of the word joint. Like, why do we call it a joint? Unsurprisingly, some of the words associated with marijuana overlap with other illegal substances. The word joint, for instance, first served as slang for the equipment, including hypodermic needles, of an opiate addict. Interesting.
A joint was a hypodermic needle?
It was like your rig.
Right.
Which we now call what we smoke
rig.
oil out of.
Right.
But that's your
Rig.
setup, you know,
Right.
your stuff. Probably due to the use of the word in referring to opium dens in the UK and US in the latter 19th century.
Wasn't a joint also like where you go to listen to jazz?
That's
where people used to swing their hips like the devil. And you remember? And
Yeah, like a juke joint.
yeah, you go to the joint and you have one.
And that's the
Two.
other possibility. And the other possibility is that it's from, you didn't smoke it by yourself. You smoked it jointly. Which that's something that definitely changes, I feel like, as, you know, like I smoke my own. Maybe we'll pass it around, but I prefer if everyone in the room rolls their own and keeps
Has their own joint, yeah.
Yeah. That's,
You know, I honestly feel like there's a bit...
that's like all sharing a cigarette at some point. It's a little ridiculous.
Right.
Before weed was really legal or even medical, it was such a sacred thing to share a bowl with a group of people, and who got greens was... That was a decision to be made.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, now we're like in the future, and everyone has their own goddamn greens. And at the end of the day, I haven't heard someone offer greens in years. And I mean, maybe between old school homies you do,
Right.
but like there's that camaraderie of, oh, we only have one bowl of weed and so it's sacred. So who's the honorable one to get the first hit? That's gone. Those days are gone now.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how that what other outlets are going to open up for that now that that's not. I was talking with the Yerba Mate guys actually. They did a thing where they introduced traditional yerba mate ceremony in schools, and they actually reduced tea and drug use in those schools because they had them sit in a circle and share the gourd like you traditionally do it. And just that ritual aspect of it, like that's what I loved about it when I first started smoking was like, oh, we're a group of like-minded people. We're going to get together surrounding this one thing and sort of celebrate it, but it's going to spin us off into all this different stuff.
You're also hiding together.
Well, of course.
There's a risk element where you're engaging in something consciously, but you're doing it because you believe in it, but you still got to hide. Like you and me, Mitch, on 4/19/2009, we were smoking a bowl on CU campus.
That is true.
But we were still hiding.
It was pretty out in the open.
I mean, it wasn't like we were ducking behind a bush, but we did like dip behind a tree.
Yeah, we did dip behind a tree. That's true.
It's kind of reminded me of the great documentary, The Union.
Yeah.
You know, because that just sort of says like it's an inside thing between inside people. Even that's more of a grower thing, but it's, you know, even when back in the day per se, when it's you know, a smoking thing, it was more of a social thing, I think, than it's kind of turned into with legalization coming our way. But
definitely almost like a scene. Like I feel like it's like a music scene. And
quick question though, back to the what's the joint?
Yeah.
I've always wondered, what's an L? Is L a Louis?
An L is a blunt. And
What?
an L comes from the El Producto.
I mean, I know what an L is. I shouldn't have phrased it that way.
Yeah.
But where does that come
Oh
from?
yeah, El Productos. Those are like the first cigars that people really.
And I've always, because I was like, you know, I've always wondered, what
Yeah.
the hell are they talking about?
El Productos.
It's the style of how you roll the blunt.
There you go.
I've heard that too, but I don't believe
It
that.
is because of how the.
It makes a little L with the tail. Is that your
No, it's
argument?
not about it. Well, it's because it's an
Inner and outer leaf
Yeah,
blunt? Yeah,
it's
I agree
inside
with
out.
that.
You know,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
then you get the little off the end. You got to rip that off and spit it out the window before you spark up. It's like
And
a
that's-
backwoods.
You're making me want a blunt
But
so
not-
bad right
not
now.
Right on. Hey guys, by the way, we're still call-in format. I know you guys are listening. Actually, Chris, are there people listening? I never know. I can't see. There's people listening. Wow, guys, call in 720-381-1420. The topic today is genetics, even though we haven't talked about it. We have Jason in studio. We're going to start talking about the Bruce Banner, breeding the Bruce Banner, and genetics in general. But any question you guys have about genetics, related to genetics, we're going to have John DeFriel coming on, and he's the scientist for the Genome Project. So he's here to answer like hardcore genetics questions. But call in, tell us stuff. If you guys are just listening to the show and want to say what up, call in 720-381-1420. Right on. And with that note, Jason, let's talk Bruce Banner, bud.
Certainly.
So wait, you put together Bruce Banner?
Yeah, I made it like a decade ago. That's kind of the trippy thing about it to me.
I didn't know
starting
that.
to get like a lot of push lately. I mean, it did in like 2009 when we had Delta 9 popping off, but like now it's starting to make more mainstream like push now and like High Times and Cannabis Cup lore and whatnot. And I'm like, I love the strain. I mean, it's named after me, but it's like I'm kind of a little bit beyond it. I still love it, and it's still a great strain, but it's like it's on my back burner. I'm on to like kind of newer and other things.
I think I want to definitely know more about the newer. Oh, that was quick. Pick him up. I don't care who it is. Oh, lost him. Call back.
Womp, womp.
We got one. Yo, what's going on? Oh, it's that guy. What's going on, buddy?
What's happening?
You want to do your intro?
Dun-dun-dun. Sure, if you want. I don't care.
Yeah, welcome to the Adam Dunn. It's Adam. Everybody, it's Adam Dunn. Hooray. All right. How's Vegas?
Yeah. Good.
Sounds like you're having a good time, man.
I know.
Who else is on the line?
Yo!
Oh, is
The
everyone
boys. The boys. We're wondering who's sitting in our seats. Yeah, who's sitting in our seats?
So Crunchy's in Adam's seat.
I see Crunchy. I thought he had Ebola like 3 shows ago.
No, he's cured.
I got it.
The weed cures
Yeah,
Ebola. We
everybody
proved
knows
the
that.
theory.
Duh. I got it on purpose.
And then I see that the kid has now been replaced. There's
kid?
no respect. There's
What's-
no respect. I thought
Oh.
we were going to leave the seats empty.
We're not going to leave the seats empty. Come on. I can't talk that much. So how's Vegas? What's the NCAA conference like? Ryan, do you love Vegas?
Yeah, it's cool.
How many strippers have you seen?
A lot.
Do you still love strippers?
No, what is it?
No, we have not seen it.
Yeah, first
You're
I
not-
did, I'm already receiving crazy emails from the ex, so yeah.
Good. I hope she listens. Hi, Brittany.
Hey.
So
So
Adam,
no, we had the NCAA yesterday, which is that's all round table, people running around pitching each other stuff. So that's always got a
that was the
similar
ARC view
vibe to it.
yesterday, right?
That was yesterday, and then
Yeah.
today was like we're registering downstairs, and just realized there's 2,000 booths at this trade show. It's ridiculous. I can't believe how big it is.
And they're not like
it's gonna
just selling paraphernalia and stuff, right? Like they're all businesses or whatever.
We haven't really gotten into the list yet. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting mix. It looks kind of like it's that classic Vegas style where it's everybody coming down to. We talked to one guy. He said, "Are you going to the pot show?" I was like,
going to the
"Oh."
pot show?
Yeah, it was kind of depressing. I was like, "Oh, we're going to one of those shows, actually." So, yeah.
So Ryan, is this your first time in Vegas?
No, I went with Kyle
Oh,
back
that's
in
right.
January. It was
So this is
incredible. Yeah.
okay. So it's not as exciting, but it's your first time in Vegas with Jan and Trip.
It's my first time in Vegas, like actually with not on Kubo's budget.
Yeah,
so.
balling out. So how's the balling going?
It's good.
Do you feel like an asshole
Our
yet?
hotel room has a window to the shower, which is cool.
It's good. Yeah. Who you watching shower, buddy?
I don't know why they would put that there.
To watch people shower.
We're in the Rio, dude. We're in the Rio. It's not the classiest hotel.
You're in the Rio. Okay. Thank you for putting everything in
Yeah,
context.
that makes sense.
Is Ryan having trouble finding
Yeah.
places to eat there? Buddy, there's a
well, no, he loves it. This is GMO heaven right here.
Oh,
yeah.
GMO
Is he
buffets.
killing it at the
If you like
buffet?
GMOs, if you're into GMOs, Vegas is a good spot.
Yeah, in the Rio, there's like a build-your-own Whopper Burger King bar here, so I plan on hitting that up a couple times.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Quality.
That's like the classy meal at your hotel.
I'm going to have one at my wedding.
Ryan sounds burnt out. All right, guys, are you gonna hang all show, or you were just calling in to say what's up?
Nah, we're gonna listen to the show. It's more fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Fail miserably at my job.
I miss the
gloriously come
timing's
back.
all fucked up, dude. The timing's all fucked up.
Yeah, of course, because I'm not there holding it down.
I know.
Crunchy,
What?
Your days are numbered in that seat, my friend. I'm watching
I
you. I'm watching
assume
you right
so.
now.
Yeah, I'm rubbing in some stuff. It's going to be...
I didn't let him sit in your chair. He's just in your seat, bud.
Okay.
I'll
there you
find
go.
your chair.
Sounds good.
I'll find it.
I'll find
Yeah.
it. It's the one with the beard
Sounds
marks
good.
on
You
it.
guys doing a good job. Keep it up. We'll see you guys when we get back.
All right,
Give you
later.
a full
Later,
up-
dude.
I might even give you another update in a little while at the end of the show.
Yeah, if something
crazy.
cool's happening, call in.
Yeah.
All right.
Of course.
I want to find out about Bruce Banner. Hang up.
Later.
Later. Right on. So, Jason, break it down for us. Like the different phenos. I know the number 3 is the one that's out there. I know some dudes who had the number 1 and the number 5. And then everyone was saying there's another one that they keep in house. Tell us
Yeah.
all about what the
There's
goals.
a few.
Tell us about how what your goals were, what you started with for your breeding stock, and how the phenos represented those, and how you picked what. You know.
Yeah, well, when I started it, at first it says it's Colorado creation. It's actually made in Montana. I went to the University of Montana.
New fact,
There you
dude.
go.
That's fucking. Everyone thought it was a Colorado. strain.
Everyone thinks it's Ghost OG. It's not Ghost OG. It's Cold Creek OG, which is
the true OG.
True
right?
OG, LA Kush. I mean, what do you want to call it? Want to get into this whole thing again? That's kind of what it is. But I'm calling it the Cold Creek because that's the same cut that came here, and it's the same cut that's been passed from Boulder. It's what I used it as when I got
Which
it.
may in fact be the same as the Ghost OG, and we'll find out with the OGenome project.
There you go. Exactly.
But-
We're getting into the OGenome project.
but I doubt it.
Which I have lots of OGs, which I want to give you guys to go into them because I'm kind of just as curious myself to know exactly what the hell are these sometimes.
Yeah.
But back to the banner. So I started growing about 18 years ago, and maybe 4 or 5 years after that, you're on your holy grail search. But I was a big member of Overgrow, the forums, the boards, and everything else. And kind of dates me a little bit, but I started in a C99 cabinet. A lot of people might know what that is, little like a Home Depot wardrobe closet with a 400 lighter and some computer fans. And then every single garden exponentially doubled. You know what I mean? You start with a 400 to 2 400s to 1,000 to a couple thousands. But anyway, make it out to Montana, and I started going to school there, University of Montana. Love Missoula. And I was on Overgrow when ResDog was killing it about 2005, 2006. He was dropping lots of gear that was really good at that time. If you recall, there was a strawberry diesel auction on Seed Bay that crashed the entire servers out. I don't know if it was a bot that was running trying to bid it up or whatever, but all the servers crashed out. When I bought that auction, I didn't know exactly if I'd won it or not, and I went to bed. And there was people camping out, staying up over 2-3 days online trying to get these beans. And I think I got them, but I just went to bed and was like, enough of this. Woke up the next day, had won those beans, and I was going, oh, damn, I've got to do something special with these. At this time, I wasn't really a breeder. I had dabbled. And on Overgrow, there was a cat named JLP. He's still around. I'm not sure which forum he's moderating, but I'm kind of off the boards lately. But JLP sent me some beans, the Juliet, which was Cindy 99 times NYCD, which is a killer strain. And that just kind of got me intrigued as to breeding projects. So when I won that strawberry diesel from Rez, I was like, I got to use these males. I mean, everybody in the world wants these beans. If you get these males, you're doing an injustice not to use these males. So when I got the males, my first inclination was drop this to this OG, this Coal Creek. And like I said, it wasn't the Coal Creek at the time. It's passed me as the original OG. It was the only OG I knew of. You know what I mean? I didn't know of a ghost
It was
cut.
OG, right. It didn't cut
just the
have
OG.
names yet. Yeah.
So I threw it on that OG, and I'll even be the first to admit it was pollen chucking. You know what I mean? I did a little forum, I think, on IC Mag saying, I'm going to do a little project, do a little experiment, just throw this on here, see what happens. Pollen chucked it. Probably got about 200 seeds out of that OG. It's funny because nobody knew how bomb that was. I mean, I kept about 25, started about 25 of them, and that's where you kind of get the 1 through whatever, and I picked the phenos.
So what happened to the other 175 seeds?
Dude, I brought them back to Colorado because Colorado's my home, and I was coming back. I was a big string cheese fan. I don't know if you guys know what the string cheese incident,
for
jam bands, all that, whatever. And I was at Winter Carnival, and I brought them back, and I was passing them out at Winter Carnival, all my boys, and I'm like, this is going to be some fire. But nobody really knew because we were smoking the seeded OG, and everybody was kissing my ass for that OG, and I'm like, give me those seeds back once you're pulling them out. And a lot of people kept them, and I can't tell you how many of them just got crushed, smashed, lost. No one fucking knows.
But there may be other
there
cousins out
is some
there.
floating potentially, but at the same time, it's just sort of like I don't think anybody. Not to say I command respect, but anybody respected those seeds for what they were going to be. You know what I mean? And so of the banners that are floating now, it's really only like about a 25 seed stock run that I did, and I found about 3, like a polyhybrid in there. I found about 3 different phenos coming out of there, and the one that was OG Kush dominant was the number 3, and that's was my personal favorite. I'm a huge OG fiend, so it's like. Once I got that taste and it added a little bit of strawberry, a little bit of aftertaste, a little bit of punch to it, I was like, holy cow, this is something special. The 1 was a good hybrid mix of all of them, and then the 5 was really strawberry. The 5 was a little bit stretchier, doesn't yield as much. There was a number 2 as well that was really greasy and fuely, and I ran that for a short period of time, and I don't think it's around anymore. But that just didn't quite yield as much. So the 3 just ended up being the people's choice, which kind of in turn made it what it is today, because there is a 1 floating around, there is a 5, and more to how the banner kind of came to be. I took those beans, started them, found the 3 right away, and was like, holy cow, this is something pretty special. And this is back when 2007, like I'm in college, nobody knows what I do. I guess statute of limitations probably expired. I dug out my fucking crawl space. It was like Saddam Hussein style. Like I didn't know what to do because it was Montana. It was sketchy, So I literally dug out my crawl space and had the garden going down there. Popped these beans, grew them out, and was like, holy cow, this is something crazy good. But I didn't tell anybody I was growing. I mean, it was a full-on secret. All the people that knew I grew was in Colorado, and Montana was like super low-key for me. So I'm this guy at the bar that's just got this OG in his pocket that's reeking out the entire fucking bar, and everyone's like, who are you? What's going on with this? And it sort of turned me into like this mini legend at the bar down there, and I'm going, I know this is pretty good. Well, I brought it back to Denver, passed to some people. We all knew it was good, but we didn't really knew it would turn into what it turned into. And like I say, I think the strain's great. I love the strain. I'm not talking any crap on the strain. It's a phenomenal strain. But I never would have guessed in a million years that it's going to be High Times top tested THC at the Cannabis Cup or whatever it came in at, and strongest strain on earth or whatever the hell it is. Now, with that said, this is High Times, and this is their lab test or whatever.
Well, they always use a local lab.
And that's what I was going to say. I know plenty of people. I mean, I've gotten higher than 28.3% THC through full spectrum. Right. It's like, it's High Times, so I'll take it for what it is. Thank you very much. We'll put it on our website. That's sweet. You know what I mean? But when I'm talking to the boys, I kind of know it's like, show me some of yours, show me some of yours. It's all about your lab. It's all about what lab tested it. Is it double-blind test, all that other stuff.
But even still, man, the thing about the banner is I know a lot of people who love it. a lot of people who love to smoke it, but more on the grower end, man. Like it yields and it has that OG reek to it, and it's got that OG potency, but lasts longer.
Right.
It's a little more up. I don't know, Max. What do you think about the banner?
Well,
I
have a bunch of questions.
Go, please.
Yeah. So, my first question is, when you say number 1, number 2, everyone likes the 3. There's 4 and there's 5. Are you saying?
Oh, caller.
Are you saying that there's 5 different phenotypes from the first round of breeding, or are you saying that this is a F1, F2, F3?
No, 5 different phenotypes.
It's not
even true phenos. They're similar. They're close to phenos, similar, but there's a little bit variation.
So you take a male and a female, you pop them all, and you can tell that 5 out of what popped are different from the same mom that was.
I wouldn't say 5 were different. I would say 3 were different.
3 were different.
And then I picked 5 keepers.
Okay.
That I kind of saw little variations in, but most of them were stayed on one trait. You know what I mean? Either an OG or a strawberry or whatever.
And that's typical in most breeding senses to get multiple different phenotype variances from the first breed.
On the F1, you can,
yeah, you're on, caller. We're gonna bring you in a second. What's going on? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, this is the African Connection. Hello from South Africa.
What's going on, bro? Thanks for calling in. It's what, like 10:30 out there?
Yeah, around 9, eh?
Yeah, pretty late. Right on. Our caller's from South Africa, guys. That's pretty
sweet,
awesome. This is our first call from the continent of Africa.
Right on, international call.
From Durban.
Yeah. So what's good, man? Tell us about the scene down there. What you got going on?
Yeah, well, I think we're kind of waiting to hear what's going to happen with this medical bill that's going through. It's in Parliament at the moment. And then there's also the test hen crop that's going on. And there's another couple called the Darkhorse couple that are like just pushing for awareness and things like that. So I think next year we're going to find out what's going to happen. Hopefully something good.
And what's up with the herb down there? Are people rocking American genetics or different, more African genetics or European genetics?
Yeah, I think mostly European, hey? I haven't heard much about American, but like the cheese is very popular here. Trainwreck was. And so I think mostly they're from Europe. There's still like the African bushweed around, but it's a lot of foreign genetics have snuck in there, so that's changed. And people are also, they just want like the high grade, they're like mad over it.
Do you ever see the African bushweed grown, indoors really well, like those genetics? Because here, I should say in the U.S., there's this like appeal to the exotic African landrace, right? Like everyone wants it, and they want to grow it in a 20-foot tall warehouse, and really bring it to its maximum potential, and then it has this exotic lure. But I'm wondering if it's just kind of ditchweed that happens to be from Africa.
It's like, it's very sativa, some of it. So but like full sativa, it grows like really thin, feathery buds and very tall and takes forever to flower. So, I mean, it's not really so great as like a kind of a home growing thing, but I think it's good for mixing into with some indicas or something like that.
Does it come seeded usually?
Yeah. Hey?
Yeah, does it usually come with seeds when you pick it up?
Yeah, if you're getting it in the cities, then yeah. But if you go out there into the bush, then you can find some nice stuff. But yeah, it's normally got seeds. I mean, there's males just around, so and they don't get pulled.
Everyone in this room's getting very excited.
We're all staring
Everybody leaning into their
mics.
mics.
What? I got a question though. What cultivation techniques are popular down there? You guys mess with hydro much, or is it all soil in the dirt out there outside? People go inside much, or are we just working outside?
I think, there's definitely, everything's illegal, so it's dodgy, or hush-hush. But, yeah, there is a lot of indoor hydro, which people really like. And then, there is outdoor as well, like also some greenhouses, and then also like in the areas where it's kind of natively grown, they're also growing our foreign genetics, and you can get some really good stuff out of there.
Yeah, but that's always for us. It's interesting. Like everyone's upset with that in this room. Everyone's like, there they go, putting the European genetics in the landrace. There's this weird appeal of something that you can go back, because I think a lot of times we find, and Jason, this is a great tie-in for you, when we cross a lot of the genetics we're working with, right? It's, a lot of OG crosses, just a lot of the modern genetics, they've been so inbred that you can reach a point that certain phenos are weak, man. They're just weak against bugs or weak against mold or weak against whatever. And there's this, I don't think it's mythical. I think it's a relatively accurate general sentiment that if we can get some hardy landrace outdoor genetics in.
Like a Durban. Durban's a great mite strainer. I mean, mites hate Durban, you know?
Mm.
So it's
look. Yeah, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
Look, I think you can still find original land races, because the areas where it's grown, they're quite big, you know, so there's different pockets, and there's some areas where it's not so close to like the roads or tourism or whatever, so there you will still find pure land races. And yeah, I think for genetics, it would always be interesting to have them tested also, because now you guys are testing for the cannabinoids and stuff there. So it'd be interesting also to see what's in some of these genetics here.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I don't know if you've seen our episodes where we have like the field tests. They're almost like a litmus test where it's a color changing test and it's in vials, but we work with CB Scientific out here in Colorado, and they make these, it's just a field test. So we can definitely get some to you, but I think the more exciting thing that Crunchy's whispering over here is like we might have to do a strain safari to Africa.
Exactly what I was just thinking. I was like,
everyone here's thinking
going to Africa.
I got a couch surfing account. I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
Adam, if you want to try Adam Dunn Show strain safari to Africa, call back in. Let me know what you think on that one, buddy. But yeah, man, thank you so much for calling in. We're gonna keep rocking and take a few more callers here, but please keep listening to the show. Keep calling in. Spread the love down there. It's really cool to hear that we have traction that far away from home, and hopefully we'll come down there and meet you in person.
Yeah, you guys just come down, and thanks for the awesome show. It's so cool just getting all the knowledge and hearing what's going on there, and yeah, really awesome stuff. Good work, guys. Thanks very much. Oh, and shout out to the PFA fam.
Yeah, shout out to the PFA fam. Many of them listening to the show. Right on, brother.
Yeah.
Well, I'll catch up with you on Facebook, bro.
Cool. Shoot.
Peace.
Ciao.
Right on. Let's make the Bruce Banner famous in Africa. Or what? So where'd you move on from there? Have you continued the breeding process from those F1s? I know Max had some quote.
A little bit. I dabbled a little bit, but the thing is, this is where I learned about femmes and stuff. Is I kind of started messing with the white femmes and stuff like that, and trying to do some selfing and trying to grow that back to the Banner. But I got a bunch of unstable crap, and I was just like, I'm not going to mess with this femme stuff anymore. And to tell you the truth, like in 2004 through 2008, I mean, I was hitting every seed pack was just a winner. I mean, everything I was hitting was just fucking awesome. But then it just started turning like 2007 or so, everything just turned into losers. And
that's everything you were picking up or everything you were producing?
Everything I was picking up. Because I wasn't a true breeder at this point in time. I didn't do much breeding at all. I was just picking up genetics, still looking for my holy grail. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the thing is, one thing that I think that a lot of people fail on, this is kind of diverting from the Banner topic or whatever, but it's phenotype selection, And people will pick up a pack of seeds, like MK Ultra or whatever. Like I think I went through 70 MK Ultras before I found the one I wanted to keep. You know what I mean? They'll pick up a pack of seeds, maybe like a novice or whatever, or a new dispensary owner, and say, "Oh, I got the MK Ultra," and they start them, and they find one that's a female, and they say, "There's my MK Ultra." You know what I mean? And that now becomes the clone that's passed around when it's sold in dispensaries and everything else. And I'm just like, the phenotype selection was what I was losing when I started getting in later 90s. I just didn't find the phenotype selection that I was looking for.
Right on. We got another caller. Let's bring him on. What's up, caller?
Hey, what's going on, man? Big from Virginia. How you doing?
What's going on, bud?
Nothing much.
Thanks for calling in. What do you want to talk about today?
I heard y'all were, had you'd call in and ask some questions about, genetics in general and
buddy.
stuff and breeding. It always seemed to me like flavor, structure, things like that, smells and whatnot. People, they really lock down on those things, and some things it's like the actual drug traits, like the no ceiling thing. Like some things you can just, keep smoking and smoking. It just seems like you never really get tired of it. Whereas opposed to something else, 2 weeks later, you're like, I got to smoke so much of this now, that tolerance effect and stuff like that. And is like that something that's kind of pops up random, or is that like, some like a trait that you can associate with some type of gene pair where you could breed for that, the no ceiling effect?
I think Max and I have the same answer. Let's see. I'll give mine first, and then Max, you give yours.
Go ahead.
Okay, because you said you have your answer. I don't think you're going to change it on me, and we both have it in writing somewhere.
If I understand the question correctly,
right? I think so. I think the thing with the ceiling is, I think that can be an individual. I think it can vary based on the individual strain that you might hit a ceiling on. I might not hit a ceiling on.
Right.
And that's for like, I love the Golden Goat. I don't hit a ceiling on the Golden Goat where I know for certain other people do. So that's just an example of that. It has a lot to do, I think, with the terpenes in your own metabolism and how the terpenes modulate your endocannabinoid system that's in your body, that's affected by, your hormones and everything else in your body. It's going to be pretty unique to you.
Right.
And Max says,
all right, here's what I have to say. There's two different possibilities that could be going on. One is it's you, and two is it's the plant. If it's you, then your C1 receptor in your cerebral cortex could only have a limited amount of cannabinoid receptors that don't respond when you basically fill them all up. There's no more responding because they're already plugged. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about dabbing. When you do a dab, the reason why the high goes away in 20 minutes is because you overload all your receptors at once, then there's no more receptors to receive. And so there's a ceiling height limitation due to that. But also, you have to understand that if you just so happen to have a high CBD strain with a lot of high THCV in it, that CBD is a cannabinoid that actually turns off THC. It counteracts it. And THCV is a cannabinoid responsible for delay.
Right,
So
and that's the other piece is that THCV
you could be
change.
smoking a plant where the CBD is actually diminishing the amount of THC, and then the THCV is actually slowing down the effects. So you're sitting there and you're puffing, and nothing's happening like you think it should, and it's all due to the cannabinoidal response within that ratio.
Gotcha. Well, that is definitely insightful.
See,
but
I can
say like something that's like kind of widespread amongst some people. Say like you have like some clone only that's just outstanding. You've been smoking it a couple years, and it's almost like the first time that you had smoked that.
Well, your brain
Say
chemistry.
Like somebody had like some type of breeding program, and everything's passing along, and like the stone's there, but it just seems to like level off, like it has that ceiling to it. Is there like a way,
If you smoke the same strain for a year, you will develop a tolerance to that strain, because the amount of cannabinoidal ratio is what your body is used to. And then you introduce a whole brand new type of ratio set of cannabinoids. Now you don't have a tolerance to that.
Yeah, you could think of it almost like a key, right? So like a key has a variety of different bumps and grooves that can stack differently. But now you can think of your mind as having, thousands of different locks, or, an infinite number of locks. So you can just keep finding all these different keys. Now, if you keep opening the same lock and opening that little compartment, it's going to be the same, but all of a sudden you start opening a few different compartments and changes everything all around.
Gotcha.
And we have another
cool,
caller
man.
on. We have another caller on the line. Let me...
Y'all be good.
Yeah, thanks, brother.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks
for
for
the
the
questions, man. That was a good question.
That was, yeah.
Hey, Mitch, it's John DeFriel.
John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be on.
Everyone, this is John DeFriel from Phytotype Agrigenomics, and they are the testing company that will be doing the testing for the Genome Project. So I know we have some new listeners that I want to talk about the Genome Project with. Jason, you said you were interested in it, so we can definitely talk about it too. So the idea behind the Genome Project is we did all this, collected all these stories from all these people who had the OG and gave it to so-and-so and gave it to so-and-so and gave it to so-and-so on down the line. And we started to identify that really this was the same cut handed down, and it seems to have a few different names out there. Now, some of these maybe are the same, but really knowing people who have a lot of these OGs, they seem different. And Jason, you're one of those people, so why don't you...
Let's see. What to that point? I mean, I have maybe about 20 OGs right now, and they all seem different to me. Every single one of them. But at times they appear to be the exact same. So it's just fascinating to me. How do we get the same plant to have so many slight varieties to them? And I think it could potentially just be environmental, because you take the same plant, same clone, and I give you a clone, Mitch, and you take it to your garden. It's not going to look the exact same as it looks in my garden. You know what I mean? But the genetics are the same. So that's where we're going to dig into this genome and figure out what's going on.
Now, here's my question to you, John, is like, let's say something's a seed. And we said this, if it's an S1 seed, we'll be able to identify it. But if it's if they're F1, two different F1 seeds from the same batch, will they appear different to your tests?
Yeah, absolutely. They'll appear like siblings, just like, if I sequence your genome and your brother or sister's genome.
So you're never going to get a twin, identical twin type situation from across.
In plants, I'm not aware of identical twins happening.
I've seen it in one seed.
That's possible, but it's of course going to be a very, very, very small percentage with any cross. The majority of the offspring you're going to get, especially with plants, where you can get hundreds of seeds from a single plant. The probability of any of those hundreds of seeds being identically the same is very low, just like the probability of having identical twins in humans is low compared to the probability of not having identical twins.
Right. And Jason was saying...
So if they were identical twins, it would look identically the same. But if they were just true siblings, then they should have unique genetic markers.
Right on. So we should be able to tell the difference between any S1, any F1. Will we be able to start teasing out the ancestral lineage of whatever turns out to be, say, the P1, the parental generation?
Right. That's
your
exactly
next
my
question.
Like, can you tell me what the OG is in my banner if I give you a banner sample? Like, can you tell me the lineage of the parent OG of that? Or are we looking at only at this generation cross?
I can reconstruct long-term family lineages, just like, for example, we could reconstruct a phylogenetic tree of life. Sorry, I live in San Diego, and there are fighter jets flying over my head right now. But just like we can reconstruct the tree of life, we can go all the way back to where bacteria and archaea diverge, and where bacteria and eukaryota diverge, and we can trace all of life all the way back to our common ancestors that were the little bacteria swimming in the ocean millions and millions and millions of years ago. So it's all just based on evolution and the conservation of genetics. It's this beautiful thing that every living organism that we know of is based on DNA or RNA. Because of that, we can reconstruct their entire heredity.
So I got a question for you, John. My name is Max, by the way.
Okay.
So I hang out with the Colorado Cannabis Genomic Research Initiative.
Sure.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so, tell me if I'm wrong, but my general understanding currently is that in order for you to effectively look at your Bruce Banner genetics and see where the original parent type genome came from in the OG lineage, you would have to complete the genomic mapping of cannabis globally. And that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to say, like, okay, is this an OG? Yes, it is. Where does OG come from? Now, where does OG really come from? And that is a 5 to 10 year project, because you not only have to, basically map genomes from the start, but then you have to match the genomes that you've got a map of to the genomes that are still landrace in the field, and that is something that's going to take 5 to 10 years. Is that accurate, or am I thinking about this not accurately?
No, that's accurate. So if you wanted to reconstruct the entire tree and you wanted to be able to say very, very specifically that these are the exact parents, then yes, it would be a humongous project, and you'd have to do genome sequences of tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of plants, or maybe even millions. But if the question, what I like about this genome project is it's asking a very specific question. Adam and Mitch have this humongous network of people who have been working with these genetics for 20 plus years. And because they can source samples from reputable sources, we can begin to ask the question of, okay, of these samples that we sourced, what is their relatedness? So we're asking a much smaller question than like the entire genus of cannabis. We're asking a question of, from the samples that we have sourced,
which are ostensibly close relatives because they're all OGs, right? It's like doing a genetic study in Iceland, where there's
that's a good example.
Yeah.
So
it's a different question.
And so the ultimate goal of the O-Genome project is not a global mapping, but it is to see how closely related or not closely related the OGs are within the OG family specifically.
It's a first question. It's building the OG family tree.
Okay.
And then from there, and I believe we have other callers in the line who I want to bring in the discussion in just a moment. But from where we're starting is we're taking and we're going to understand the OG family tree, and we'll have that database. And from what I'm understanding, John, to answer Jason's question, at that point, anyone can send in a sample and have it compared. And now it may be that if I get, you said it's 96 wells in a plate. Is that correct, John?
Correct.
So we're going to throw in 96 samples. It's going to be all known OGs, probably a few different samples of each one. And then we'll get, we'll throw in the Diesel and Chem family because I'm curious to see how that relates, the headbands and such. And then we'll, with all that, put it out. There's going to be obviously doubles in there to test, known doubles, to test the accuracy, and those should come up as the same. But really what we should have at the end of the day is some number of genotypes, a relationship between those genotypes, and then we can refer back to because the lab's going to get them with random labels. They're not going to get them with their names.
Right. I suspect you're going to see a very clear picture going back to a very clear-cut OG.
To the OG.
Right.
So...
that would be ideal, and we would call that a rooted tree. So when you build a phylogenetic tree, if there is one common ancestor for everything on the tree, you call it rooted. And that would be it's hard to reconstruct rooted trees because it requires you seeing a lot of samples. But in this case, because we can hopefully source things from reputable places, it would be ideal that we can find it to be a rooted tree. That there was one original and everything else is a derivative.
So another understanding of mine is the huge difference between a genotype and a phenotype. In this entire conversation, we've been saying that we're trying to map the genotype of OG genetics, but from my understanding, planet Earth still doesn't know if indica, ruderalis, and sativa are different genotypes.
Right.
Some scientists say that there is one genotype cannabis and it's all sativa, and that indica and ruderalis are phenotype derivatives. So within this context and within this conversation that we've just had, we're talking about phenotypes, not genotypes.
That's the other question I was going to bring up.
No. So essentially we need to have a conversation about definitions initially.
Okay.
So the indica, sativa, ruderalis question is a question of speciation. Are indica, sativa, and ruderalis unique species? Some people say that sativa and ruderalis are two unique species and that indica is a subset of sativa as a species. And so indica is a subspecies. Now, a genotype is a collection of, is an arranged, stored collection of nucleotides in a DNA sequence. And when you get a genotype, you are specifically saying for each sample, what is the unique combination and the order of the nucleotides in that sample. Now, a phenotype is just what do you visually observe when you look at something. So if you have the same genotype, like I take one plant and I make 3 clones off of it, so I know that they're genetically exactly the same. They have the same genotype. Now, you guys have been talking about growing the same genotype in different environments. Absolutely, that does have a difference. So now if I take the exact same genotype and grow it with 3 different nutrient lines or something, or different light sources or something like that, the plants are absolutely going to look different. Those differences define the phenotypes. Does that make sense?
Right, but my one question would be, what about the flavors? Because on a phenotype, you can get a drastically different flavor. It almost seems genetically different entirely than its sister, who doesn't taste the same.
Well, the flavors, it can definitely be the newts. I mean, you know that certain newt lines have their own distinctive flavor, and you're like, oh, well, that's
But
how
you
it's
can't
started.
tell me that, like,
But flavors come from flavonoids and terpenoids, and that comes from the genetic makeup of the plant.
The genetic makeup defines the potential. It doesn't define the expression. John, back me up or shoot me down if I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, yes, that's well put, Mitch.
Okay.
So
wait, say that. So what you're
So,
saying
like,
is
you may
that so
have-
the plant has potential for, let's say, 200 terpenes and 200 flavonoids, but based on the available nutrients that the plant can uptake, will express the possibility of what it has to offer. Is
Right.
what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
Correct.
sense. Okay, cool, very cool.
And so I believe we have callers online. Do we still have callers, Chris? Cool. Let's talk to some of our additional callers. Oh, my phone's going off during the show. Poor form for me. Any of our callers want to say what's up?
There's another guy. There's somebody on the line.
So I guess no.
That was cool talking to the dude from
Cool.
Africa.
Maybe we're on mute. John, you still with us?
I'm here, yep.
All right, cool. Well, we'll just continue the genome discussion. So what Max just asked, the term pheno is thrown around. Like if you run 2 different seeds from a pack, or however many, we'll say you had, like Jason, you said you found what, like 5 different phenos, right?
Well, 3 main phenos, yeah.
3 main phenos, but they were all different. There were 25 or whatever different genotypes. Is that right, John?
Yeah, if it's a true cross that happens, or just any cross that happens, every single seedling will be a unique genotype.
Even the ones that appear to be similar.
Unless you breed true inbred lines, in which case, so we kind of have to go into some little bit of molecular biology here, but essentially cannabis is diploid like humans are, which means you get 2 sets of chromosomes, 1 set of chromosomes from each parent. Now, when those things combine, you that's called, you get that zygosity at different alleles. And so if at every single allele or at every single gene, both copies of the chromosomes have exactly the same genes there. Now, when you go and have sexual reproduction with a plant or with a human, your gametes, or your sperm or eggs, each split.
Oh, John, let
one.
me put you on hold for just 1 second. I'm sorry to cut you off. Caller, we do hear you. If you could just hang in till John's done making this point, and we'll bring you in.
For sure.
Right on. Cool. Sorry, John.
If you have true inbred lines, then they are completely homozygous, which means that every gene on both pairs of chromosomes are exactly the same. Now, if you cross 2 different purely inbred lines, each of the offspring will get 1 chromosome from each parent, and since those are the same in each parent, it doesn't matter which one the offspring gets. They're always getting the same copy from each side, in which case that would be a perfect F1 population, and every single offspring would have the same genotype and appear exactly the same. Now, if you have any sort of heterozygosity in there, which means there's a different copy of a gene on each of those, on one of those chromosomes, now you open up the possibility of a little bit of variation coming in here. And then it just becomes a big statistics and probability problem to determine, what's the percent heterozygosity for how many, which would lead to the potential for different combinations of genotypes down the line. So it's a very complex topic that gets simplified often in conversation. So you have to be very careful that you define what your starting points are.
Right on. So, caller, do we still have you on the line?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Hello?
Sorry, I just got a text here.
That's all good. This is Mike from the Moon. I'm just calling to find out what's up. What'd you learn about the haze? You never talked about it.
All right, I'll tell you what I learned about the haze. Because here's the thing, dude.
Keeping it from me.
Because it's not a found fact. You're talking about the PIF, the Uptown Haze, right?
Yeah. When you were talking to Jadakiss, he seemed to know something. I bet he does.
No, he just described. I will play the sample for you. He described 3 different types of PIF that he's gotten.
Right.
But he didn't know anything. Now, asking around with other people from the East Coast, it definitely seems to be potentially New York originated. So a story I'd heard before was that it came from the Hayes brothers when they came out from California, that they brought those seeds to New York, and it seems to be some verification of that all these different types were coming around, but definitely grown in Florida, and there is a Dominican connection. But I had heard that the genetics originated in the Dominican Republic, and now I'm starting to doubt that theory.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think it's just somebody with dank genetics, and maybe the people in Florida are running it, and they bring it to the Dominicans.
Right, exactly. And I mean, there's probably Dominicans running it in Florida, but definitely apparently it was produced largely in Florida and moved up to the East Coast. And that's kind of as deep as at some point you don't want to keep digging on certain questions where it's still illegal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. But I'm saying I have Chem 91, I have Sour, I need Haze. I'm dying here, bro.
Oh, everyone needs it, dude. That's a true fact. I mean, there's what I have heard. So I was talking to JJ NYC. He was in town last week, and I asked AJ about it. He didn't have much to say, but JJ chimed in, and he filled me in a bunch. And what JJ told me is it's around number 1, and number 2, it's just different hazes that got grown in that environment that made it what it is, and that's, if it was grown outdoor in Florida, it's going to have a totally different, as we're kind of talking about in this episode, totally different phenotypic expression, a different cannabinoid profile, unique smell, all that, than if it's grown indoors in New York.
Yeah, exactly. But what's it like as an East Coaster trying to explain to these West Coast kids about haze, and they just look at you like you're retarded?
Oh, no, I feel you on that, man. I feel you on that 100%.
Dying, bro. It's just like people are like, what? What do you mean a sativa? It's like...
It's crazy how... that's one of those no ceiling strains like that other caller was talking about. That PIF Haze is, it's just one of those stay ups. And we'll track it down. I'd love to eventually, do a genetic comparison. Maybe that's our second genome project. Start looking at haze lines and bring that into it and try to fit. Because if it turns out like, oh, it's Neville's haze crossed with original haze, then that's awesome. We can make that again or something like it.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
You know anyone with bag seed? Has anyone in your connects found bag seed? I've never got any bag seed from it. Sadly.
No, I mean, supposedly the black haze that comes out of Florida is similar seed stock, but from when I talked to JJ, he said that it's definitely not the same. I don't know more, but I'd start asking around. This might be one to start asking the Florida boys, is my point, rather than the New York boys, just because they're on the wrong end of the line. Crunchy's our Florida connect, so I'm gonna might have to
I'll
put
talk to some people.
I know you know Dominicans too.
I know Dominicans.
I know that. All right, right on. Well, thanks for calling in,
All
bro.
right. Thank you, man.
Be good.
Peace. Hello.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can, man.
Hello.
What's going on, man? We can hear you just fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just calling in. I had a little bit of input to put in on OG Kush.
Yeah, drop it, man. Oh, and what's your name, man? What should we call you?
Just call me Supa.
Cool, Supa. Let me know.
So basically, the information I wanted to share is that basically, Crippy was originally the coin that was used for that specific cut. I don't know what Bubba and Joshy actually got, but the Gainesville Green Crippy strain that was around in Florida, that was basically the origins of OG.
So now Joshy said it was a bag seed off Crippy. That's what, or Bubba said it was a bag seed off Crippy. So that makes perfect sense.
Can I ask a question though?
Yeah, but I heard that was different than Gainesville Green. But Max, go ahead. Sorry.
So my
Okay, well, I'm not actually from Florida. I'm from Hawaii.
Okay.
Hell yeah, man. Hawaii.
That's just what kind of told me from that side was that Crippy and Gainesville Green was the same, but
it's not.
Yeah, Crunchy's from Florida, so he's
not at all. Direct source. My dad was actually responsible for breeding the Crippy back in '85.
Okay, so let's talk
So-
more about that because our guy Dave Richards says that was part of this one specific group. But if you can tell us more about the genetic heritage of the Crippy,
I can't share too much just because I haven't really. There's a couple people on the mainland I need to talk to.
Okay, fair enough.
You know, like I'm honestly paranoid even calling in.
Yeah, thank you for calling from Hawaii. That's pretty awesome.
What island are you on, bro? Not to get too. I don't want too much information.
Yeah, but
I'm just
anyways,
wondering.
the one thing that I feel comfortable adding right now is a hash plant that's not indica. Is actually Hawaiian web leaf indica.
So
I've seen this theory also propagated, the Hawaiian web leaf indica. Please go on.
Well, I'm not ancient. I'm not in my 40s, so I was really young when all of this took place. But we still grow what we call Hawaiian duckfoot over here, and from what I've gathered from a few people, that was originally an Australian strain.
I've heard that as well. This is actually one
Kind
of the theories
grasp
that
of what I've been given and told that I can share is that there used to be a pot colony down in Haiena on the island I live on called Kauai, and it's called Taylor Camp. That is where most of the genetics that my dad bred with and the genetics that we had available on our island came from. And a few of my friends have actually given Hawaiian strains to, I want to say, Soma and a couple other people. They didn't get crispy or anything, but they were more after the Hawaiian sativas and skunks.
let me ask a question for the guy who's on the phone and everyone in the room. My understanding was that in the 1970s, there was a group of students from Berkeley, California, going to the School of Berkeley, and they were kind of sick of smoking Mexican brick pack coming up from Tijuana. And their idea was to go on a mission to Afghanistan to pick up original Hindu Kush varieties because of the trichome production and cannabinoid value of the hash that comes out of Afghanistan. And so in the 1970s, they fly out to Afghanistan, hang out with some farmers, and bring back a lot of genetics. And the reason why the Emerald Triangle in Northern California has always been so fruitful is because if you look at the longitude and the latitude of the Emerald Triangle, it is very similar, if not the same, as Afghanistan, and they also grow it in a mountainous region. My understanding of OG lineage is that it most likely comes from an indica plant from the jungles of Southeast Asia that were traded during the Silk Road period between Asians and Arabs around 2,000 years ago, where a lot of indica jungle varieties are now growing fruitfully in the desertous mountain regions of Afghanistan, cultivated for around 2,000 years, and then brought to California. And when we say OG, we're talking about the original genetics, the original gangster, ocean grown, whatever you want to call it, but that...
You're talking about the lemon pine salt.
I'm talking about like, I thought OG straight came from Afghanistan and came to California in the 70s via students.
That's
but
definitely not the case.
That's not the case.
We know for sure that the OG, the clone we know as OG Kush, Bubba found a bag seed in Crippy in Florida. So now if we know what the Crippy is, then that's starting to get there. And this is all stuff that...
Well, I have the original cut. I've been handed a bunch of different OGs. I honestly don't really keep any of them. The only one I'm really interested in right now is the face-off because my friend speaks pretty highly of it. But yeah, I mean, I would be happy to submit, a gene sample or something to try and help get this all squared away.
Yeah, definitely get in touch with us too, because we can maybe figure out a way we can point you on the face-off or something. But you know how to get in touch with us. You can always email just directly off the website or Mitch at adamdunnshow.com, and we can definitely bring that into the scientific genetic mapping.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Right
I've heard a
on,
lot
bro.
of people saying the 92 is the original cut that
I've got
brought
the 92
from Florida down that way. And I always wondered, with triangle and all that, just exactly what is what.
I was told my 92 was from Florida as well. Makes sense, the story.
Right. No, it all does. The 92 is the one.
You guys know if triangle and 92 are the same cut, or what's the deal with
Mine's
that?
definitely
That's-
not.
I don't think they are, but we're going to throw them in the test because I wonder if the relation's there. And here's the thing. If it starts coming out that these are all different bag seeds from Crippy that were found in Florida, that would also make sense to me. geneticist John DeFriel, you want to help us out with that? Could totally different bag seeds from different batches of the same cross exhibit similar, traits?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If they have the same parents, then they have the same, potential for genetic combinations that would lead to similar phenotypes. Just like two siblings have a high propensity for having the same eye color or similar hair or something like that, but always with some slight variation.
Well, I have one other thing to add.
Go ahead, please.
From my understanding, when the cut was passed to Florida, there was also seeds that were passed as well. Like actual direct breeding.
Well, that actually leads me to a question to the caller. Are you familiar with the strain called Monkey? The Monkey from Florida?
I don't think so. The only thing I've really seen from out there was 92 and Triangle.
I came out with the cut from a buddy that was, the story how it got here is ludicrous, but it was flown here on some airplane or whatever, but it was the strongest indica OG had ever smoked, like the most couch lockiest stuff of all time. And we lost the cut quite a long time ago, but I know it's from Florida, and I just wondered if it somehow tied into the story, if you had any info on it. But I don't believe the Monkey was the true name. It's one of those things where, what's it called now,
Right. Or what was it really called then?
And so if some of these genetics are coming from Florida, my question is who was the dude in Florida who got those genetics from where? Like where did the genes come from?
So allegedly, right, this is the one claim that we have, and our caller here is introducing a whole new angle, which I think is as valid as any other until we explore it, and we'll find out exactly with the test. But allegedly, this dude Dave Richards told us that part of this ring that was breeding in the high desert in Northern California that was busted came out with this cross that was crippy, and they were putting that out in the Southeast. And supposedly they were the crew that was putting that all out.
So are you saying that the crippy cut from Florida could have came from California?
Well, possibly. Well, they were land-raised strains that they were crossing. It wasn't California genetics.
Sure.
Now, our caller here is saying something different. Adam just texted me, caller, and wanted to ask you about Kauai Electric. I don't know if that rings any bells.
My dad was partners with the guy that actually bred that. That wasn't his specific strain. I've actually been working it, trying to get it into an F4 seed form as well as Crippy right now.
Well, we're definitely going to be in touch with you because if you've caught Adam's interest, then you've definitely caught,
Let me ask
interest.
Let me ask the caller real quick. What do you know is going to happen in Puna with the lava flow and all the growers out there and land races? This is random, but do you think that's going to pose an issue for genetics that we might lose?
Hopefully not. It's hard to say what the lava is going to do. I know a couple of houses have burnt down, I'm pretty sure by now, but
right on. So I
think most of them are pretty like the Puna butter, and they've bred with it a lot. There's a lot of seeds around because we've lost a lot of like local strains like permanently, like the Hawaiian web leaf indica. I've been looking and I cannot find it. I just find variations that came from the seeds. I don't know if they're been recrossed or what, but the original one only threw 1, 2, and 3 blade leaves, and they're super dark green webbed.
Yeah, I've got a house in Puna, and I've seen that that Hawaiian web indica you're talking about, but I cannot get a cut, and I do not know if it's still around because it was quite a while ago. And I shouldn't say house. I have a foundation with a tent city on it with lava headed towards it. So, yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about.
Prayers, it's all good, man. Everyone I know over there is kind of stressing, but
right on.
This web leaf genetic, it's a land race from Hawaii.
Supposedly Australian duckfoot.
Yeah. Supposedly it's from Australia, but over here we always called it Hawaiian web.
And I know we have some Australian listeners based on what the internet tells me. So if you're an Australian listener and you know anything about the duckfoot, definitely call in. I'll throw the number out again, by the way, 720-381-1420.
Does the duckfoot, is it super skunky by any chance? Is it like really, really skunky?
I've never seen it.
No, it was the one that we really liked was like a really sour appley, and then it had that real strong fuel characteristic of OG.
I was going to say rocket fuel, yeah.
The only reason why I asked that is because Cannabasia seems like a web leaf.
That I'm not familiar with. What?
Cannabasia hops.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's like a web leaf cannabis.
Yeah.
So,
were the
Jason,
same
you're
thing.
familiar with this the strain that the caller's talking about?
Yeah, well, I've smoked it. I've never got to grown it. I've seen it, but then
Well, you
again,
smoked it though. So how similar is it to OG?
close, very
Really?
close.
So you
yes.
think valid contender?
Yes, for real. It's very, very close.
Well, this is awesome.
But this
Yeah.
is the thing. It gets crazy because like the sour is so close to the OG, but it's not. And you go back to AJ or whatever, it's not the same. It's not even near the same thing, but it's so damn close. I mean, it's not so damn close, but
It's similar.
very,
It's similar.
very, very similar. And you got the Kim, and then you
Similar
know,
profile.
yeah.
But then, how close is the duck's foot or the web leaf indica?
If you're asking me, I would say
Because we can't get it back anymore. I've been looking since 2-3 years now, and I can't find
That's-
it.
I was gonna say,
seen it
actually-
in like early 2000s, it was in Hyanna.
Yeah, I smoked it in Puna in 14, so it'd probably be 2010, dude, like 4 years ago, and that was just through the homies out there. So it's been a while. And yeah, to answer your question, it's so close to the OG. I just want to say it's another variation because it's not.
Closer than Sour D?
It's closer to Sour D than OG, if you ask me.
Interesting. Well, I mean, that's why we have John here. I mean, that's what we're going to put to the test, and the more of these samples we can get to put in there, the more of a picture we'll have. Now, John, I want to ask you: at what point are we casting too wide a net, and it's going to just do more harm than good for our research here?
I mean, really at no point. The only time it would cause harm is if you really were just sequencing a whole bunch of clones, in which case you'd just be spending a whole bunch of money to get the exact same DNA sequences back out. As long as you're sure there's something new and you can actually apply some sort of meaning to it, I think that, it could be infinite.
And now, you guys are not going to be able to sequence the whole genome. You're just going to look at single nucleotide polymorphisms, right? Like these trackable mutations.
Right. We're gonna sequence about like 0.5 to 1% of the entire genome. We have certain regions that we know to look for. Whole genome sequencing would be much, much more expensive.
And that's more what you were talking about, Max, where it takes 5-10 years.
Yeah.
But that's like so much of our DNA would be the same between a human and a plant and a fly and a bacteria, right?
We're 50% the same genetic makeup as a banana.
Right.
Right.
My biggest question is something I've dubbed the strain name dilemma, and the problem comes from both the black market and the white market. And what I mean by that is he's like, yeah, don't look at me like that, like you don't know what I'm talking about.
Was last week.
The white market. No, but so back in the day in 2009 when we were buying pounds off the street to retail to medical patients, I was a bud tender, and in the same day, I got 4 different types of ISS. 4 different ISSs. 2 were the exact same, and it was ISS, and the other 2, I was like, what the hell is this shit? And the same thing, that same day, someone tried to sell me a pound of AK-47, and instead of those big, luscious AK buds, they were like moon rock nuggets. And you're just looking at this person, you're just like, you know what? How can I, without this dude's name, he calls it AK, obviously it's not, so what is it? So at the end of the day, I call it Pootie Tang, okay? And then I just made up a name, and I sell it, and it sells great, but lo and behold, we got the dude who made Bruce Banner hanging out in the house with us, and I guarantee you, because I know I've had Bruce Banner cuts in my grows multiple times, and they have not been the same. And I'm not blaming this guy. I'm blaming some dude who didn't have Bruce Banner but wanted to sell it real bad that said, hey, this is Bruce Banner. And so my question is when you're doing your research and you're trying to map a tree and you ask people for OG genetics and they come to you and they say, yo, here's my Bruce number 3, and it's just not, how does that, what are the mechanisms in terms of
our primary, that's the reason that this is easier than just as we said before, just throwing a net, is if we're getting a Bruce number 3, we're getting it from this guy right here.
Sure, no, and I got that, and that's what's cool. That's the best part.
That's the case with every OG though. I'm not just, if it's not a verified source where everyone knows that person has the cut, including the person who made the cut, I'm not interested in it. You know what I mean?
So you're not getting what you're studying from Craigslist.
No, and I'm not just walking into a dispensary and picking up random OGs. Right. Definitely
but
not.
Mitch, as a breeder, whatnot, as breeders, we're trying to convey one strain to you, and when you pop a pack of seeds, that might not be in there. You know what I mean? And when you're looking for those phenols, you have to pheno hunt that strain. We've got pheno hunter packs. You have 50 packs, whatever, and you go look for that pheno in there. You know what I mean? And that's what makes this project kind of so cool at the same time. But like I say, and it kind of ties back to how I was talking about before about phenotype selection or whatever. So dispensary X picks up a pack of MK Ultras and they pop a couple seeds, and Mitch is trying to give them a certain pheno that he's trying to portray a certain trait or a certain pheno he wants them to have. That's the MK Ultra. But they pop these pack of seeds. They come home and they don't know any better, so they take the first female they get and say, I've got the MK Ultra. It's not the representation Mitch wanted them to have, and then they take it to the dispensary and call it MK Ultra, which then gets into maybe it's not a name change, but it's just not the necessarily the right. So your AK could be from 20 different AK sources, and that AK could be a small nugget variety or a small nugget pheno, but the breeder was trying to get you those big baseball bats. You know what I mean? As the inexperienced grower or dispensary owner, as we're seeing, are picking up the first female they see and calling it, the strain. Well, that's kind of where the problem is tying into at the same time. Where if you don't go through the seeds to look for what we're trying to give you, you're not going to have the plant.
Yes and no. I'm going to say on the breeder, and just to clarify, I'm not a breeder. Adam's the breeder.
Okay.
I'm just a weed smoker guy who got a radio show at this point. I mean, I've dabbled here and there.
My apologies to Adam. Then I thought Mitch was dabbling with him.
No way. I mean, I know a lot of breeders. I bring a lot of breeders together. I'm interested in genetics, but I haven't done anything released or anything like that. But I'm texting Adam right now. But with that said, it's the onus is the difference between a breeder and a seed maker. If you're making seeds, you're just cranking out seed. Yeah, you can put out those unstable F1s, F2s. If you're a breeder, you're talking about someone like DJ Short, who, if you get 3 different apparent phenotypes, consistent across the line, that's stretching it. You know what I mean? It's on the breeder to work the lines further.
Great point. That's what I was going to say. Is when you call it a pollen chuck or whatever, when you take just a pack of seeds, throw them together and pop something out or whatever, that's not breeding. That's you have to go 4 times down the line, like you say, where we're trying to make the genome be the same across the seeds, and that is true breeding. And you need a large breed pool or gene pool to do that the correct way. And John, props to like DJ Short and those who can do that in those larger gene pools. Yes.
And John, would you say that's actually literally the case, that those genomes are becoming more and more genetically similar as you do this selective inbreeding?
Yeah, so in an idealized breeding program, you would produce 2 inbred lines that are separate and genetically distinct, and you would reduce the potency of each of those individual strains by inbreeding it over and over and over again, because as you inbreed it, you're just selecting for specific traits that you want those parents to pass on to their offspring. Then to have and this is a perfectly idealized case, you get 2 inbred lines, and then you cross those 2 to get an F1, and then this is where you get F1 hybrid vigor, because the 2 inbred lines are inbred and weak and might be lacking certain traits, but since the offspring get 1 copy of each of those chromosomes from each of those parents, that offspring now will be extremely heterozygous because because those 2 parents are very different. So the chromosomes that the offspring gets will also be very different, which then removes all that inbreeding part, and you get the hybrid vigor because they get the best pieces from both parents. And then that population should be.
All I can say, it's a damn shame breeding's not happening that way all the time.
It almost never does.
I was gonna say that's like serious breeding versus I think what other people do, which is breeding.
You need a farm to breed. It's so hard.
You need a whole separate operation.
And to go back to,
you can't be a grower and then just be breeding in the middle of your grow.
Not on that scale.
Yeah, no, of course not.
No, like for genetic stabilization, I had it set up for a lot of genetic stabilization. You know what I mean?
Are you a breeder?
Skype crashed, so we have lost all our callers.
Oh, no.
So we're bringing it back. Callers, if you want to call in, we're working on getting it back up.
Because I had a serious question for John about organizing your Fs and organizing your gene pool. And is John back on by chance?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
So okay.
Caller, what's going on?
Hi guys.
Oh, did we lose our new call? Oh man, we're having some technical
difficulties.
difficulties.
Call back in right now.
Well, give it a couple seconds. Let Chris do his thing.
No, do it now.
Guys, we're going to try to get the calls up and running again. Unfortunately, the call-in show format fails us.
So
ask your question.
Well, what I wanted to ask is, I wanted to ask John if he's heard of an Israeli cannabis genomic breeding organization that is called Breed It. And what this is these Israeli scientists from the Hebrew University, the guys who invented the cherry tomato and the tomatoes where 6 of them grow in descending order on one branch, so that you cut one branch to get 6 tomatoes instead of cutting 6 tomatoes. The dudes who these guys developed the green, the yellow, and the red bell pepper that you get in your grocery store that is square, long, in one continuous color the whole way through. 100% non-GMO. GMOs are illegal in the country of Israel. And what they do is it's all 100% selective breeding. And they're starting to do this with cannabis. What?
Selective breeding is just the most basic form of genetic
GMO.
modification.
Bro, homie, I cannot agree with you more.
What
but
I'm
in the
saying
state
is
of Colorado, you say that shit, you freak people out.
I trust me, me and Monsanto got beef like
way back.
Like Biggie and Tupac shit, like real hardcore stuff. But no, what I'm saying is stabilization over time. All it takes to get those kind of things is understanding of your phenotypes and a large gene pool to take from, and then time and writing it down.
Okay, we have. I just want to bring in. It sounds like we have a caller on the line.
Oh, it's John DeFriel again. I got to drop the call. Sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry, we crashed out, John. But thanks for calling back in. So Max had a question for you.
So my ultimate question for you, John, is what these Israeli scientists are doing, because they're doing selective breeding and you do need this huge gene pool. What it sounds like you're putting a puzzle together, but you've got 10,000 pieces. And my question is how much organization does it take to be successful in a breeding program when you're trying to create something brand new? And is there technology for organizing your genetics, and is that technology expensive, or is it relatively cheap?
If I can just answer real quick from the layman's perspective, John, and then let you in, the answer I know is that there's plenty of software available for that. That's used in agriculture, just general agribusiness.
So you could use sunflower organizers for breeding for cannabis, or would it have to be cannabis specific?
Well, now, if you're doing phenotype breeding, which is Mendelian breeding.
Or genomic breeding.
Well, that's the difference between genomic breeding. If you're doing Mendelian breeding, which is breeding the way theoretically that we're all breeding, where you're observing phenotypes and you're making crosses. And John, please jump in and tell me I'm wrong when I'm wrong.
I think Punnett would be a better like system for working out something simply if you're talking about genetics, as opposed to going all the way back to Mendel.
Well, I mean, that's what it's just called Mendelian breeding, bud.
No,
but using a Punnett square.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you observe how Punnett actually, I mean, I feel like animals are easier when you're talking about dealing with, cannabis than it is talking about other plants. Once you start doing other plants, it's really hard as somebody who primarily only breeds cannabis to really get into. I mean, plant genetics are very complex.
Sure. So John, how difficult is this organization, and is it expensive, or does the technology exist?
Yeah, so it's multiple different technologies, and it's a rapidly evolving technology. So what you're talking about, the newest iteration of it is called genome-wide selection. So the first thing you have to do is you have to identify genetic markers in the cannabis genome for specific traits, whether that's like flowering time or yield or terpene profile, cannabinoid profile, anything you can measure or observe. And then you have to find good markers that code for those things. And then a jigsaw puzzle is a good example. You said 10,000 pieces. It's actually more like 30,000 pieces. There's 30,000 genes in cannabis, but that doesn't even include like all the regulatory regions and all the other stuff that doesn't actually code for proteins. So first thing you have to do is you have to sequence a lot of plants. You have to grow a lot of plants. You have to make a lot of phenotype measurements. So that's expensive. And historically, what people did was called marker-assisted selection over the last 20 years or so. And this was developed in corn, rice, barley, all the major crops. And because it was expensive to do whole genome sequencing, or even reduced genome sequencing techniques, people would look for 1 or 2 or 10 markers in the genome that they could identify, and they would call that good. Now that genome sequencing in the last 2 to 3 years, which your friends at CGRI I'm sure can speak to very well, that sequencing has come down in cost so much that historically 10 years ago the sequencing was cost prohibitive to be able to do genome-wide selection. Now that sequencing is so cheap, doing the sequencing itself is actually very cheap compared to how much it costs to grow the plants. Because as you guys know, if you're growing indoors, these are expensive plants to grow compared to like me growing my tomatoes in my raised bed behind my house. So the sequencing is now cheap enough that we can really do this in large volumes and say we're going to sequence 1,000 genomes or 1,000 plants or something. And then now it becomes a humongous informatics problem because, okay, now we can sequence entire genomes. But that's a lot of data, a lot of data. So now all of a sudden you need to have, very large-scale computers to actually analyze all that data and find meaningful correlations out of it. So it's now becoming mainly a computing problem. So it's absolutely a state-of-the-art technology. Developing algorithms for identifying these markers and assembling the proper breeding strategies is a cutting-edge field of research that is still ongoing and only in its infancy. And we will see it become widely adopted in all of agriculture over the next. Currently it's becoming widely adopted, and it will only exponentially be more adopted in the coming weeks, months, and years.
So, John, I've been pitched this idea from these guys from the Hebrew University that what it is this university has developed the software for organizing all of this, the 30,000 pieces or more that goes to it, but there's an algorithm within the program that has predictive breeding outcomes, which means when they want to type in, I want a tiny tomato, enter, all of a sudden it says, well, you need to breed this with this with this over this many periods of times to get this many F1 series, and at the end of it, what you'll get is a very tiny tomato. So my question is I understand, and what Mitch was saying is there's a ton of genetic organizing software that's currently available, that's cheap, that's being used for other plant varieties. If the Hebrew University says, look, we've been developing this predictive breeding algorithm software for 30 years, and by the way, it's proven because every single mega seed bank on planet Earth buys all their genetics from the people who designed the genetics from the selective breeding. If they just came out and said, look, we just took that program and we're now making it specifically for cannabis, just for cannabis, is that program of value? And if it is it expensive, or should it be expensive? Or could you get away with using another program that's already available, that's already here and used for another plant, but just use it for cannabis?
Yeah, so still, there is not a database of genetic markers that software could query in cannabis specifically. So we have these markers for tomatoes and any of these plants that have been studied extensively for years and years and years. But because of prohibition, there is none of that. There's very, very, very little information around that for cannabis. I'm slightly familiar with the Breed It technology. I've looked at their website before, and I tried to figure out how much it costs. I believe a license for Breed, and I could be totally wrong about this, and feel free to email me and let me know if I am wrong about this if you find it out. I believe a 1-year license to Breed It costs $100,000, and that's just a 1-year license to use their software. And again, I might be totally wrong about this. I'm not a Breed It salesman, and I do not mean to be talking bad about their software or anything. Labeling it as expensive if it is not. But I personally use academic software that has similar pieces. The thing that's nice about Breed It is the big wrapper software, so it's got a whole bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes. And then Breed It just kind of wraps it all together with all these different algorithms. I personally use freely available academic software that's been developed to do the same things, but I have to write the wrappers myself to design these different strategies. So it's a little bit more manually intensive, but it doesn't cost me anything.
If it was $100,000 and you had the money, would you buy it?
It depends on how much other money I have sitting in a bank account somewhere.
How much extra you got on the side?
Yeah.
If you're $1 million dispensary and you want to own your own certifiable genetics once prohibition is over, and you can patent your own strains. If you wanted to patent Bruce Banner, and you could do it with the software, and it took you 5 years and it cost $100,000, would you pay for it?
Shouldn't be allowed to patent a plant.
Agreed, but
absolutely. You know, I mean, now we're getting into just like business strategy and stuff essentially. But it's like, you know, if it saves me paying some computer scientist $150,000 a year salary to design me that software and write all those wrappers and manage that, then yeah, you know, it'd be a cost savings from a business standpoint to buy a piece of software like that. And if these guys have been developing this software for 30 years and testing it over and over again, you know, they deserve to get paid for their work. They deserve to charge for licensing fees for these things, especially if it is, you know, helping to alleviate costs for a large dispensary and a breeding program. So it's really an economic question.
Cool. Well, I appreciate all your answers, man. That's really helpful.
But I think that's a really good point as to what makes, you know, it was sort of not explicitly stated. What makes Phytotype a really cool resource is, yeah, it's using the same tools with their own proprietary algorithms from their cannabis specialization. Is that sort of how you would put it, John?
Yeah, so that is what I am currently working on, is to develop, you know, cannabis-specific breeding tools and methodologies to identify these genetic markers and to build this database of information. And I know CGRI is also working, you know, very similarly in this fashion. And Nolan Kane did a lot of work in sunflowers and stuff, so I know that I'm sure they're using the same software that they used in sunflowers for cannabis. Yeah, that you know.
And it should mostly work because it's pretty much math, right? Like it's math and probability and...
Exactly. It's just humongous statistics problem.
And so at some point it comes down to the better statistician or computer scientist or information scientist, if you will.
Biggest computer.
Biggest computer, better scientist.
Yep. Biology is just becoming a quantitative science like physics as we learn how to make real measurements on biology instead of making qualitative statements about like, oh, that's lighter green than the other thing.
And that's, I think, the first difference that's happening. And what we're going to do with the Genome Project is do that qualitative panel as well. We're going to bring in experts who've grown a bunch of different OGs for a long time, like Jason, you know. And we have more callers on the line that we're going to address in just 1 minute. So thanks for calling in. Hang on one sec, callers. But we're going to have known experts on OGs in there, and they're going to do that part. You know, we're going to do that hopefully in front of an audience. And we'll sort through these exact same samples and say these two are the same, these are different, whatever. This is this one, we know this is this cut. And when we go through that, we'll have what the sources say they are. Then we will have what our qualitative panel says they are. And then we will also have the quantitative results provided by you guys, by Phytotype.
Excellent.
And then, so how does that help from a perspective of, if we see something that 3 people who know their OGs say this is the exact same thing, and then it's different, what does that necessarily mean? Is that possible, or that won't happen, or if that happens, it means something?
We would have to have a full chemical profile of the samples to really know that, because two things could be genetically different. But given the environment that they're grown in or whatnot, they could produce very similar ratios of, you know, neurologically active compounds, in which case the effect would appear the same. Because when you smoke it, all you can really talk about is the effect of those chemicals on your brain.
Well, when we're talking about growers, though, we're going to talk about how it appears when it's growing, how it grows actually, both its vigor and its form, and then color and aroma is definitely going to come into it, and flavor and effect, for sure. You know, all that.
Okay.
But is it possible that things will...
If all of those things are the same, you would expect their genetics to mirror that, and for the genetics to be very similar as well.
And is it possible that there could be some difference somewhere else in the genetic code that would indicate that it was, say, a sibling? Like, is it possible that siblings that have differences in other parts of the genome, then what codes for those specific traits we're looking at would go undetected by this test and would appear to be the same thing? Or is that not?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's what I mean. Phenotype can be a very deceiving thing because at a molecular level, there's many, many, many things going on inside a plant at any given moment, and there's tissue-specific gene expression, whether it's leaves or roots or flowers themselves, or even different locations on a stem, near the main node or all the way axially at the end.
So this is all going to matter in terms of the samples we get. So can you break that down for us?
In effect, if there are genetic differences and those genes don't code for things we can physically observe or measure, but there is differences going on, then it would be impossible to tell by eye that there was a difference, although at a molecular level there may be a difference.
Well, I got a quick question about mutations. Now,
sure.
Well, sometimes I'll see mutations come up in varieties, and those mutations will be like a leaf curl or this or that. Is that mutation going to be like a genetic marker as well in there, or can we?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. If there is a genetic mutation, a change in the DNA base pairs, then it's something we could observe. Now, again, we're only sequencing about 0.5 to 1% of these genomes. So if it was like a single base pair mutation, we'd have a low probability of actually observing that single base pair mutation unless we did whole genome sequences and started comparing whole genome sequences. So it's kind of like how it's hunting for a needle in a haystack, and it depends on how big is your needle or how big is your haystack.
Sure.
Right on. And I want to now bring on our other caller. Caller, what's going on? Thank you for being so patient on the line there.
Hey, I have a question for Josh. Kellyman, he works with the cheese line, and he said he got a tray of cheese clones, and one of those clones reversed on him and ended up becoming a male cheese plant. And from there, he started making his own seeds. Is that even possible that a female clone over time would reverse into a male?
No.
Yeah, so you guys have talked about reversal a few times on the show recently, and I wanted to talk about that briefly. So, essentially, there's this gaseous phase hormone regulator called ethylene, and ethylene signals to control all kinds of different stuff in plants. And as a hormonal regulator, and for example, if you've ever, bananas produce a lot of ethylene, so people have said if you have unripe fruit, stick it in a paper bag with a banana, and the banana will ripen the fruit. That's because the banana is giving off a lot of ethylene. Stick it in the paper bag, it increases the local concentration of ethylene and can increase ripening. Now, when you want to reverse a female plant to a male plant, you can add silver thiosulfate or silver nitrate, but people have better success with STS. And what that does is the silver has some way of blocking the ethylene activity, which then causes the sexual reversion. So if you had some sort of mutation or epigenetic change in your plant that led to some sort of alteration in ethylene production or ethylene regulation, that would downstream lead to a difference in hormonal regulation, which could possibly lead to a female plant becoming male more often. But without conducting an experiment and seeing that those different cuts, I wouldn't be able to really answer that question.
I can kind of weigh in a little bit here too. If you read Soma's book, he talks about the organic way of making feminized seeds, and his organic method is to take any female plant, I believe it's 2 to 3 weeks past its prime, and then it'll start to stress and develop male flowers. The plant is not becoming male; it is just stressed into the point of trying to reproduce.
And that was something that we were trying to clarify on last week's episode. So it's a good thing to bring up that method, overflowering, is what it's sometimes called. The overflowering method is a stress-induced method, but the chemically altered method actually makes a change to the genome.
Point,
Is that correct, John? That's something I think is true.
No, the chemically altered method, at least as far as I know, if you're using silver nitrate, you locally add the silver, and that silver interacts with the ethylene and somehow blocks the ethylene regulatory system, and will then just change it causes a hormonal change in the plant, leading to the expression of the male flowers.
So the genetics aren't changed when it makes a seed. It's just a hormonal change in that plant.
And you're not talking about hermaphrodizing. You're talking about turning a female male. And then, so let's say I wanted to do this. I want to go home. I got 2 Island Sweet skunks. Okay, it's my favorite strain, my favorite beans I got in my collection. I only got 2 females, and I want seeds. So, how much silver nitrate would I? And is this a foliar feeding? Is this a root feeding? Does this happen in veg or should happen in veg, right?
I highly don't recommend messing with silver. It's pretty gnarly chemical. It's probably not the best way to make your feminized seeds or go S1, and it may work, but that's pretty gnarly. I mean, I'm highly, highly anti-feminized seeds for one, and then anti-reversing a plant. I mean, it's just not a wise thing to do.
On principle or practically
I'm just
speaking?
curious how
Both.
this whole thing would work because I don't understand. I'm just trying to figure out.
No, you can foliar it with some silver, and the thing will just start throwing male flowers like crazy. And then you use that pollen back to the female.
Back to the female.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
But
itself,
the
which
organic
is
way of doing it would be
Sumwa's method that I just explained. I shouldn't say Sumwa's method. It's the
overflowering
overflowerization method. Yeah.
And so my island
But
sweet skunk,
overflowering-
she flowers at 9.5 weeks. And what you're saying is that like week 12, and I keep her going, she's gonna throw out some male pollen. And would you just take that pollen and hit it with a younger female ISS that's beginning its flower
The
phase?
exact same plant that you took the.
Well, that would be an S1. If you wanted to make reverse at what's the nomenclature for a reverse? If you were to take that and hit it to a different ISS plant, John, what would that be called? A reverse F1?
Different. So the genetically the same.
Well, no, like that's so.
Selfed.
Yeah, it wouldn't be selfed. If I had 2 Island Sweet skunk seeds, I popped them. They were both females. I reversed one of them and used that pollen on the other one. What would that be? An F1, I assume, right? But
that would be an F1. Yeah.
But would you expect it to be different because it's reversed, or it will be just like a male-female F1 on the genetic level?
So it also it becomes convoluted also because if you have 2 ISS seeds and they came from the same parents or from the same cross, you'd have to know what those parents were. If those parents were both true inbred lines, then those seeds you started with were F1. Then if you cross 2 of those guys, you'll actually just end up with an F2.
Right.
So you have, So you have to know some ancestry data before you can really determine what sort of cross it is later.
And I generally find that that'll be highly unstable F2.
Yeah, F2s are the least stable, right?
I mean, Hermie-wise.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So not just in terms
so
of
let's say,
variation.
hold on, let's keep going though. Let's say we did
We
that,
have
and now we have an
additional
F2.
callers on the line. No. One more caller. 2 minutes. No, we started late, Chris. We don't only have 2 minutes.
So you'd let them flower and then breed them again, and then let them flower and then breed them
All right.
again.
So do we have one more caller on the line in addition to John?
4, you say 4 is stable.
Yep.
And 5 is.
I guess.
I'm here.
Yep.
Okay.
So it's just us and John. Us and John.
You got a call?
Oh, cool. Caller. What's going on, man?
Hey, this is Larry in Santa Fe.
Hey, Larry. What's going on?
Question for you guys, being breeders. How do you feel when someone takes your genetics, crosses it with either someone else's or their own, and then goes into business?
I can answer this. I'd love to answer this.
Please answer it.
At first, I was incredibly pissed off. I was like, how the hell could you do that? That's totally cheap. But then, I think I matured a little bit over through it, and it's kind of a collective effort. It just depends on the level of respect that you do it with. I mean, everybody that wants to start some sort of genetics, you have to use somebody else's genetics to get where you want to go with it. I mean, unless you have a land race, of course, and you're like our South African caller, you go out in some field and get a true land race. But you have to start with someone else's stuff in a sense. And I mean, I've seen the Bruce Banner strain. I've seen it cross to my least favorite strain in the world is blueberry. Props to DJ Short because blueberry is incredible, but there's really bad phenos running around that are commercial as hell. And it's like when you throw a banner times a commercial blueberry plant or whatever, it's insulting to me. But it's not my place to say what you want to do with your thing. You know what I mean? Now, if you want to get real commercial on it, the dispensary will remain unnamed, but when I had Delta 9, we've had banners stolen, and then dispensaries would take or pay high dollars for those banners and then do a full-page ad in a magazine, being like, we have the Bruce Banner number 3. And that's basically saying out and out, like, I stole your shit, you know, like, what are you going to do about it? Here's a full-page ad, come buy off of me. That's pretty low, you know what I mean? But if you were to say, hey, I'm making a strain, and you can't get a hold of me, but you want to use the Bruce banner, by all means, use the Bruce banner. Just throw a little tag credit in there, you know, like to whoever, if you can figure out who it is, like, and not to relentlessly plug myself, but if you go to like our Darkhorse website, on the few seeds I have made, they're just saying exactly who was involved in the creation of the strain all the way back. Like I have a strain for like example, like Cherry Wonka, which is a alpha chronic gobstopper seed. And times I think it was a banner or whatever, but then you go to Resdog with the strawberry diesel, Ganesh with fractal genetics down to the F3s, what he did with the strawberry diesels that he worked on further. Then you go to AJ with the sour diesel. Then you go to Kyle Cushman with the Cushman cut in that cross. So it's like you got
that goes
five,
back further
six,
too.
yeah. Then it goes back further, Strawberry Fields Haze and everything. If you start listing that on your website, as I attempted to do as a breeder, you're now giving credit to the people who put in work on this line for the past 20 years. But
it's also the start of a pedigree, which is the original way to breed. I mean,
so in that rambling answer, I hope I sort of gave you an answer.
Well, yes, thanks. I guess reaching out maybe to the source and letting them know would be the proper etiquette.
Larry, for sure, I would say the general etiquette is reach out, make every exhaustive effort, right? Like do everything you can and ask, and calling into the show is a great step. So, you know, commendation on that. But make every effort you can to reach the breeder that you're trying to find the source. First, identify the source, right? And secondly, reach them and ask sort of permission in a sense. Now, if they say no, you can choose to do whatever you want. They have no way of controlling you. But at least paying the proper respects and offering at least a token, you know. I think it's always nice to, if you know it's one person, you can offer them a percentage of the sale of their cross. You know, if it's an economic thing, because people do get salty over that. If you make a bunch of money on their cross,
that things are now. This isn't buddy stuff. I mean, things are now becoming e-commerce world, and things are changing a little bit. And when you start when you build a $500,000 warehouse or a MIP or whatever, you know what I mean, and it costs you X amount of dollars to get there, and you have investors, and you have so many people lined up. You have bottom dollars you got to hit. It's not about your basement grow anymore. And I made these beans, and here I'll kick you a couple bucks or whatever. It's like if you then hijack something I've made, or steal my genetics in a way, and as I spent $500,000 to get here, it's like, yeah, we got a real problem, you know what I mean? But at the same time, I don't want to see plants patented. I don't want to see court cases. I don't want to see people dragging each other into court.
It doesn't have to be put into the control mechanism. We can handle it like respectable people. So yeah, Larry, to short answer your question, don't be a dick. Try to reach out to whoever you can find and get it going. I gotta get wrapping up here though, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. And John, we want to thank you for calling in too, brother. I'll call you soon, and we'll get all the details on lock for the Genome project because we're very excited to get that moving ahead.
Excellent, Mitch. I appreciate having me on the show today. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys. And if anyone else has any more questions or wants to talk to me ever, feel free to shoot me a line, john@phytotype.com.
Right on, John. Thanks, as always, for being part of the team. We got like 4 minutes left here, so I'm going to do some shout-outs. I know I didn't shout out the sponsors at all yet. First of all, big ups to Incredibles, Colorado's #1 edibles. Hopefully we'll be hearing more from them soon. Also, we got to give a huge shout-out to Way to Grow. I was delinquent and did not look up their sale. But I know if you go into any of their 6 stores all over Colorado or go to waytogrow.net, they'll tell you right there what their big sale is this month. It's always something special. I think actually this month is like a Black Friday all month. So serious discounts on pretty much everything. And then I know if you use the code Adam Dunn Show, when they ask you what your account is, you will get heavily hooked up at Way to Grow. Gents, if you're not doing it, I strongly Adam said he went in there and it was way better than his usual discount. And he buys a lot of stuff. So
Way to Grow is huge. I got everything you possibly ever need.
So big shout out to Way to Grow. Also shouts to Boulder Wellness, our #1 dispensary in the Boulder region, hopefully going rec within sometime early in the new year. We're really excited to see them cranking out that all good living organic soil herb. And on that note, big shout out to BuildASoil. I know Jeremy's always listening in, a good friend of the show. Guys, check out buildasoil.com. If you're into living soil organics, even if you're not into totally organic, but you want to add some organic solutions to sort of boost things, a lot of the higher end lines that have these little bottles of stuff, those little bottles are enzymes and things like that are organically sourced, and you can make it really potent at home for a fraction of the cost. and you learn a lot more about the plant and its actual life cycle that way. So check out BuildASoil.com. There's some excellent resources there, and we're going to be doing a class, an online class when we hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I checked 800. I checked this morning, and there were 830 subscribers. So we're going to be doing an online class when we hit 1,000 subscribers with Jeremy from BuildASoil on organics. We can add more instructors too. We're going to charge a small fee, like $10 to $15 a person. We're hoping to get if we can get 100 people, we can get some really cool stuff and have some not only question and answer, but have maybe a virtual tour and stuff like that. And I know we have the listener base for it, and we can. I was just at this Organic Cannabis Association meeting, which is actually a pretty cool thing, and we should talk more about it. Max, you were there, yep. And we're going to bring them on in a future organics episode. But I know a lot of the listeners have really liked the organic stuff. Some of it you just got to see, you can't talk about, so we got to kind of figure out streaming off-site from their places. So we're going to do the small fee, but hopefully think of it like a field trip. We're going to all take a virtual field trip over to Jeremy's soil place and maybe a few different organic farms, and all learn a bunch about the hands-on of doing stuff. And on that note, 2 minutes left.
Let me just say real quick, if you haven't grown organic yet at all, you need to do it. You need to try it. Like if you have a good soil and you're crushing it and you're doing some, I don't want to name a brand. If you're doing some chem stuff and you're crushing it and you're getting good yields, great. But try organic one time. Just please try it one time and see what happens. Your yield's going to be pretty comparable, and it's going to be way, way danker.
Yeah, definitely. Your trichome weight will be higher, usually end of day. We want to thank Max Montrose for coming in. And also we want to thank Jason from Darkhorse Genetics. Dude, shout out the website for Darkhorse? So
DarkHorseGenetics.com. Yeah, we have a dispensary in LA as well. And
cool.
Popping one off in Denver, hopefully around January.
Nice. And are you guys on Facebook at all?
Yeah, I just started it like 2 days ago. So come be my first friend.
Cool. Darkhorse Genetics. We'll link it with the show page. Crunchy, thank you for sitting in, bud.
Oh, man, it was a pleasure. I felt like my beard grew slightly.
Right on. I always want to shout out my beautiful wife, Reese, and little baby Farron, learning how to sort things into piles and sit up and play. And she's just being really awesome now. She was adorable this morning at 5 a.m. So I got up and braved the snow. Guys, drive safe out there if you're in Colorado dealing with the snow. If you're in Vegas, we're slightly jealous and enjoy the warm weather. And don't forget, subscribe to us on YouTube so we can hit that 1,000 subscribers. Just click the like button. It's somewhere. It's in one of these corners. If I keep pointing to the corners, it'll eventually be in the right place. Yeah. Like, subscribe, hit us up on Facebook. We're also on Instagram, which we don't check much, but we'll try to fix that. But yeah, keep it real, guys. Hang out, and we'll see you next week.
Yay.
When Adam will be back.
Thanks, everybody.